Okay, I think it should have been giving you the warning that you're being recorded.
Yes, it gave
So,
me it up here in the top right.
perfect. So we have a very small meeting today so that we can record our Camden County CERT radio emergency communications training. Thank you to Fire Chief from Sleeper Stoutland, James Vaughn, for joining us, and thank you to KE0LMZ or Jasper Renee Kaysen, who is also joining us, thankfully from the library. There you go, Climax Springs Library in Climax Springs, Missouri. So, the reason why we're doing kind of a rehash of or an overhaul of the emergency communications training is we've had a lot more boots on the ground experience in the last year. We've had a lot more incidents in the last year, and we've had a lot of actual interaction and feedback from the people that we work with on radio communications. So we've been able to improve our training and put some new stuff in there that wasn't in there before. And I know for a fact that Jasper is going to love doing the new what not to say because that's always Jasper's favorite part.
The
And
best part is I haven't even seen the slideshow, so I'm going into this as blind as the rest of you.
hey, it's a good thing, which brings up the fact that we actually need to share where all of this stuff is that we'll be training on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Hmm.
Hopefully it's all visible. Entire screen. There we go. Let's do that. We want to share everything. Okay. We'll close our participant window. You guys should be able to see now. All right. So hopefully you can see the ccmocert.com website.
Yes, it is
Okay.
showing up clearly.
Right over here under the resources tab, if you hover over training, you can go down to virtual training and click on it. That'll bring you to this page. And this is where we have a lot of the information shared for the public that we use during these virtual trainings. The slideshow runs really fast on that page. You do have the ability to pause and move to each of the slides independently. If you choose to do that, you can follow along. One of the slides, oddly enough, doesn't sync up with its movements or its background details, so it looks really weird to me, especially if you download the PowerPoint. It does not sync up at all. It is really odd. But if you look at this one that's actually on the website, this is the one that you'll see today while we're doing the training. And then right below that, which I will click on that button now, these are the new radio communications training examples that Jasper came up with for us. And we will be using those during the training today. So let me go ahead and present. Now, Jasper is actually going to fill the shoes of the general public. So, Jasper, remember to ask any questions that you think the public might ask at certain points during this, or that you think that the CERT members would ask during the training.
And James is also here to catch this because I have been on the radio for far too long. So a bunch of things that are old hat to me are going to be completely brand new for a bunch of people.
Well, the other thing, yeah, the other thing for us doing it all the time is we're also doing it on the amateur radio side a lot, and James is on the first responder side more, so he's able to bring in a different side or a
Perspective.
different piece of different perspective, different information on what first responders also might be looking for. He operates mostly in Laclede County, but he does have a portion of Camden County in his district. So here we go. This screen didn't change much. Of course, the first thing to fail during large scale emergencies is almost always communications. To
Nope.
prevent this or manage it, the course will teach you about how to use the radio, how to pass the messages, and how to make sure your messages were acknowledged and understood. Mainly because you can talk into the mic all you want, but if the person on the other end is not understanding or receiving your messages, it's absolutely useless. Okay. So here's some of our updates. Ooh, pretty. Some of you will
Fancy.
recognize all of the nice radios that we use the example pictures of. Boy, that radio bank right over here looks so familiar to me, right over on the right-hand side of the screen. That's home right there. All right, so we'll do the basic stuff. Now, our Camden County CERT uses the Bofang GT3TPs. In case you guys haven't seen those, this is what they look like. I chose one that has a rubber duck antenna, which is the original antenna that comes with the radio, because it's a lot smaller. Oh, this one actually extends. Hey, I changed my mind. Actually, we have our extending antenna. You can actually get antennas that do a number of things depending on what you need them to do. So we'll touch a little bit on that. This one, of course, extends. I love these antennas the best because when they're down, there's less chance that they're going to be broken. And when they're up, they extend, of course, the range that you can use the radio at. Any input on that there, Jasper?
Depending on where you're operating, some antennas might work better than others. For instance, you won't need as long of an antenna if you're on flat ground, but because we are in an area with a lot of rocks and the like, we have to get some distance with our antenna. And sometimes the height of the antenna gets a little ridiculous for handhelds.
Yeah, we have a couple of the extendable antennas that are, I think, about 4 feet long to go on this handheld. It's
They are
hilarious.
goofy to look at.
So we'll go over some simple parts. You always have the power knob and volume control, which you can turn on here. You have the transmit button, which on this radio is on this side, right
Hold it a
here.
little closer to the camera since we're
There you
small
go.
right now.
Can you see that?
Yep.
It's right there. Okay. You have your charging port, which on this radio is actually on the back, but on some radios it can be on the bottom or it can be up higher. So you just want to look for those contacts, and that's how you know where your charging port is. You have the antenna, which we'll go over a few more options for that as we go through the training, and when you should and shouldn't extend the antenna, and when it would be helpful and when it won't be. Your channel buttons, of course. On this one, it's on the front. On some, it's on the top. As a matter of fact, do you still have one of the county radios over there? If you can get one, that'd be great. So I'm also going to grab one of our county radios to show you guys ones that are similar to the ones in the lower right-hand corner of the screen right now. But sometimes this stuff is up here on the top along with the volume control. On these radios in particular, we have the opportunity to almost either use channels or actually punch in a frequency. So these are excellent radios. I don't care what people say about Bofangs. All right, and
Another important thing with Bofangs is that there is a locking button. You can hold it down and it will keep you on the channel you're on. Not every radio has that, but it's very useful when they do because sometimes you hit something with your hip that the radio is on and you find yourself 3 repeaters away and talking to nobody.
yes,
I'm not speaking from experience, no.
you're speaking from experience. Yes, that lock button is very important, and on Bofangs, you will find that. However, on our wonderful county radios, you will not find that. Now, as you can see, the Motorola XTS 2500s that we use that are county radios, they do not have the buttons on the front, which helps when you're leaning against stuff. You're not going to accidentally change channels with this radio because everything is controlled. I don't know if you can see this. Everything's controlled from these knobs that are here on the top. And
Tilt it
these
a
are a little bit more,
little back a bit.
a little back.
There we go.
There
Now
we
we can
go.
see it.
All right. So, depending on which type of radio you're using, whether it's a professional radio, a commercial radio, or whether it's an amateur radio, you'll find quite a few differences. You'll also find a difference in the power levels that you can use, but we will touch on that more later. All right.
You may want to hide the little stop sharing banner down there at the bottom of the screen because it's getting in the way.
Oh, cool. Hey, I didn't even know I could do that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the slides that indicates the changes that we've made and why we've made them to this training. We receive some feedback because I give this training not only for community emergency response teams, I also give it for local first responder agencies as well, because normally they are either lacking in their emergency communications training, they don't have experience, or they just know very little about radios because they have 100 other things to do. So, making it easy for them to understand how to use a radio and what needs to be communicated over the radio is highly important.
I
But
love the picture that you chose for this slide. It explains it perfectly.
so, some important feedback we have received on this training is the fact that some people don't understand how to physically operate the radio. So, we're actually going to demonstrate the proper physical operation of the radio from beginning to end. I like that lost, disoriented, perplexed, confused because it hit so perfectly.
How did you get this picture from the inside of my brain?
So this picture is that I was really impressed with this stock photo because this guy right here is literally holding the radio perfectly.
He
I have
is.
never seen a stock photo where they're actually holding the radio right. So
Good
here's one of
job,
the
dude.
differences. Here's one of the differences I'm going to communicate immediately between first responder agencies and our use of the radios. First responder agencies, more often than not, they're using shoulder mics. So we have a huge problem that sometimes they don't understand that their body is physically blocking the radio because they've either put it in a pocket in their gear or they've clipped it to their belt and they don't understand that their bodies are doing. I know you have to. There's no reason. I mean, it's not picking at you. It's just
It's stating a fact.
stating a fact. So, this training that we're giving you is not going to be as effective if you have to use a shoulder mic. The whole point of giving this training is that you are actually holding the radio. So that should clarify a few questions that I've received from people about, well, what if we're using shoulder mics? How do we have to change? Now, I have seen, and I am so grateful for this, many of the first responders will actually come out of what they're doing. They will pull their radio out of their pocket and they will hold it up. So, and they hold it up properly. They hold it up with the antenna perpendicular to the ground. So that's point number one. And that's why I said this is the first stock picture I have literally ever seen with it perfectly right. So it's perpendicular to the ground. He is speaking across the mic or speaker, and I'm going to assume he's enunciating because if he's doing everything right in the picture, chances are he is speaking clearly. So watch your sibilance. Now, Jasper, for those who don't know what sibilance is, can you give
Yeah.
us some explanation and some examples of sibilance?
I mean, you're doing it right now, saying the word sibilance. You're very much enunciating that S sound. The problem with sibilance is that a lot of the times the normal sounds our mouths make as we speak English will get lost over the radio in the static. So you have to be very careful to enunciate and to be as clear as possible.
So some of the letters that will cause the sibilance are S's, which is what Jasper was just pointing out. I'm using a lot of S's right now. P's, anything that makes you blow air past your lips. So P's, B's, Z's, I think occasionally cause a problem. Anything where you're blowing air out of your mouth or it's making that sound.
Oh, it
So,
looks like someone's trying to join us.
oh, that's good. Let's see if I can get us out of the. Where did you go?
Oh, top left, because you have WebEx in.
There you are.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob was able to join us. Hey, Bob, just so you know, you're being recorded. So be careful what you say. All right, so we're still in share screen, right?
Yes.
All right,
And I will
present.
pop open chat.
All right. That way you can relay any messages to me from Bob. All right,
Absolutely.
carrying on. So that speaks a little bit to sibilance. And again, apparently I like my S's because they're now in every single word I say. Now, this is a slide that actually changed quite a bit. There's one of those B's for you. Important pieces of information to pass through the radio to your incident commander or team leader. We have gone from using cardinal directions because as much as we use that on in federal communications, in local communications, we follow the patterns of what they're taught instead of trying to fight what they're taught. So since every single fire department in at least 4 counties that I know of use the sides of the house being labeled A, B, C, D, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, then that's what our certs are trained to. Is A is the side that faces the street, and then you go clockwise around the structure. So about the location, this is where the GPS coordinates come in. Our certs, if they don't already have a compass in their backpack, they are on the cert trailer and can be signed out during operations. So we want the GPS coordinates transmitted to incident command or the team leader. The appearance of the location. Now, this is not just saying it's a blue house. This is being very specific. It's a 2-story blue-sided house with a red metal roof. So those are the kinds of pieces of information that the CERT incident commander is looking for. We need
It
to
will
know.
also typically include the damage level of the house, including things like if it's off the foundation, if there's a tree sticking through it.
That'll come into play later.
I
um,
like saying bad things that happen to houses.
Yes. Some of the things that we're also looking for is how many victims can you see from where you stand? Are you seeing them outside? Are you seeing them maybe through a front door or back door, through a window, hanging out of the window of another floor, screaming for help? You know, those sorts of pieces of information are extremely important because then we know, do we need to get first responders out instead of just allowing the CERT volunteers to handle victim care? Passability. Are the roads clear? Can we get first responder vehicles through to where the danger is and where the location is? And then possible dangers. Everybody who knows me knows my favorite example of the possible
Snapping
dangers.
power lines.
Snapping power lines. That's right. Gee, Jasper, you've been through this training a few times.
Look, it's just a very easy danger to throw at someone that it throws a wrench in every single
And it's
possible
extremely
recovery.
visible and it's extremely likely. You know, I in the last storm in August, I actually took a power line to the across the front of my work truck. So I mean, these things happen. It is real, it happens, it's a danger. And if there's still power to the area, well, that wouldn't have been a good thing. But luckily there wasn't. About the survivor, you want their approximate age, apparent gender, because in this day and age, we have numerous genders that are recognized, and we have to just go with what the apparent gender is.
Mhm.
Appearance or physical description. State of awareness, that means, hey, are they awake? Are they confused? Are they in an,
Can they communicate with
can
you?
they
Can you
communicate?
communicate with them?
Right. Or are they knocked out and there's zero chance that they're communicating with you? Injuries and color codes. CERT is trained to the same triage colors that the first responders are, which is red, yellow, and green. And of course, CERT does not have hands on black tag at all. So, CERT does not declare death, and that is a standing rule. All right. So normally, if we were doing this in person, we would say, now we're going to show you an example of the wrong way to pass information followed by the right way. But since we're doing this virtually and I have Jasper available, Jasper, we're going to do our normal training. And the first round, you're going to describe one of the pictures the wrong way. And I'm going to try and guess which one you're describing. And then we're going to do it the right way. Sound good?
Sounds wonderful.
All right, you get to be the CERT Team 1. So you can lead off calling your incident command.
Incident Command, this is Team 1.
Team 1, this is incident command. Go ahead.
Yeah, this building that you sent us to is pretty trashed. Um, roof's caving in a little. Don't think it's safe to go in.
Uh, Team 1, this is incident command. Copy that the roof is trashed and you don't think that it's safe to go in. Would you be able to supply information on the color of the location or what it is made out of?
Well, the sides are wood, and I think it might have been painted white at one point. The roof's black, and I think that's a chimney up there, but it's pretty broken, and I don't think I, I'm not too sure about that one.
Oh,
Might be a chimney.
all right. Copy possibly white with a black roof and a possible chimney. And how many stories would you say it is or was?
I think one story, but I can't tell from here whether or not it had a basement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Team 1. We copy that you think it's one story and can't tell if there's a basement. All right, so even though that was a good example of how not to transmit your first transmission, as you can see, if your incident command is familiar with what information they're looking for, they can pull the information out of you. Now, the people who do that on a regular basis would be your central dispatch or any dispatching company that's taking information. They're used to pulling information out of responders or anybody calling in to give information. Now,
Unfortunately, as CERT, your most common contact is going to be another CERT volunteer who may or may not be used to doing that.
now we
Well,
are
neither
lucky that
are
there's quite a few on our CERT that have been through this training a few times. They have some experience, or
a
like
few
James
times.
is, they are actually first responders, so they're aware of what information is actually vital on a call. So now, Jasper, if you don't mind giving us what you would consider a proper call in and description of location from a CERT team in the field back to the CERT incident command.
Incident Command, this is Team 1.
Team 1, this is incident command. Go ahead.
Please copy one two-story building with yellow siding and black roof. The roof has caved in and there is a bunch of debris on the ground. My current GPS location is a series of numbers, and I'm not making up numbers right now. That's not happening. And it appears that first responders have already been through here to examine this house because I see police tape, even though it is also a little, it is also destroyed.
All right, Team 1, copy two-story building, yellow with a black roof, and so GPS coordinates, and copy that first responders have been through because you recognize the yellow caution tape that they use when they have already addressed a situation. Okay, if it looks like they've already been through, let's go ahead and move on to the next possible house or area that we need to search so that you can proceed with looking for further victims or survivors.
Copy that. Thank you, Instinct Man. This is Team 1 monitoring.
Okay. So a couple of the things that were absolutely perfect was a description of the location. The biggest thing, even with the GPS coordinates, is noting that first responders have potentially already been through there. That caution tape is often used by first responders. You also see it in the winter time when it comes to cars that have slid off the road and they just can't move them right then, or there's not a tow truck available to retrieve them, we make sure that we put caution tape around and over the car so that people know, hey, there's no need to stop. We've already checked it out.
Mhm.
Right now, we're just waiting for conditions to pull it out. Well, same thing when it comes to doing a fast search, which is what the CERT would be involved in, is doing a fast travel on the first sweep through a neighborhood to look for obvious survivors. If the first responders have already been through there, then you're usually past the time that CERT is going to be sent in for a search. If they're being sent in behind the first responders for a more thorough search, then usually the area has been secured and there's no other damage or danger that's in the area that could put our volunteers in danger. See, and I take notes just like everybody else does, because there is zero chance with all of the great information that Jasper has given me that I was going to be able to remember that. I don't sleep. It's okay.
Sleep is for the weak. Anyway.
Sleep is for the weak. That's right. So, James, as you sit here and you watch the instruction that we give to the CERT volunteers, and remembering that they're not first responders, what other things would you recommend that would be helpful for you guys when you come in behind us, or you come to handle something that's bigger than what the CERT can handle? Way to put him on the spot. Make him scooch in. Make him scooch over into the.
Yes,
I
get
don't
him
know
in
if he's in the
frame.
frame. Is he in the frame?
He is in frame. Make sure you keep the mic near him.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to give him the headset. They can't hear you.
That way we can actually hear his response to your question.
Okay.
No GPS coordinates.
Yeah,
I
we
can
do
hear
not
you
use
just fine.
GPS
So if there's no street signs, how do you keep track of where things are?
because all the fire departments know exactly where all the roads are without road names.
But you can translate our GPS coordinates. If we're not familiar with an area, we can give that to
We
you. You
don't.
can pull it up.
None of us really keep GPS equipment in the fire trucks.
You don't need equipment.
We don't keep stuff for GPS in our trucks.
But that's something that CERT Command can do, is we can pull up what it is and find what the potential street name was and then transmit that to the first responders.
So, yeah.
You got to tell them what I said.
That the
Here, give me back the headset. So that's where it comes in, where I say I speak like 12 languages, because what we can do as CERT is when that information on the GPS coordinates gets back to the CERT incident command post, we can take that information and translate it or look it up to what that is in regular street name speak. So we can tell the fire departments, well, it's on Main and 3rd, or the corner of Main and Oak, so
Which
we can
may
give them
also
something
help
like that.
in cases of mutual aid as well, in case there are fire departments or other first responders who are not familiar with the area, who have been pulled in from other departments or other locations,
That's a
as
good
tends to
point.
happen in large scale emergencies.
So what Jasper just pointed out is that even if you guys know the area, there's a possibility you could get outside first responders who are coming to the area to help that don't know the area. So they wouldn't know, if looking for street signs, where they were at unless we were using GPS coordinates.
You can tell them exactly how many streets go past.
Right.
That's how we do it.
I know that's a simple way to do it, but you've also got more advanced people that can come in that know how to translate GPS coordinates.
Yes, but that's what
So that
firefighters have to do. You just tell them go past this many roads.
Yep.
This way.
Yeah, that's really simple. And one of the first things that's done in disaster zones is we'll take spray paint and we'll actually spray paint the names of the streets on the street and on the curb of the street. That's typical large scale disaster. It was done in Joplin. Yeah.
When we had half of Lee County blown away with straight line winds, it was just fire departments out there taking care of everybody.
He's going to argue every bit of the training as I go along.
I know, right? Your experiences are not universal.
That's not the point of the comms training.
That's what you're gonna go. I'll put
Remember, you're being recorded.
Yeah, you're lucky the mic isn't picking up on you.
So, one of the biggest things to remember is that we're all working towards helping the people who have been affected by the large scale disaster. So, regardless of wanting to argue methods of getting things done, we can always come together to get things done. And for me, being that bridge between a fire department that wants to stay doing it the way they've always done it and relying on street names versus the more advanced fire departments and people from areas that are more, I would say, city, where they
Urban.
urban, thank you. The more urban fire departments that actually utilize newer technology and newer information and newer ways of doing things, you have people that can bridge that gap between those two things. And luckily,
Especially because it's very unlikely that a CERT volunteer will be on the radio directly communicating with the fire department. As you
exactly
saw with our example, we called back to incident command, but
right.
the incident command post isn't the only area that has communications going on to different groups. There's also the
Exactly.
emergency operations center.
And having the CERT incident commander, who is the one that's going to be talking to the CERTs that are boots on the ground, being very, higher level, just CERT volunteers. They're not trying to get in there and save the people if it's above their level of training and things like that. And even communicating back, you have someone with more experience as your incident commander. That way they know how to automatically take the information that they're getting in, turn it into usable information. So they're getting the intelligence in and turning it into usable information to relay to first responders. It's almost literally like being a translator, saying that you speak 14 languages because you know how fire departments specifically want their information, or how a police department specifically wants its information, how the state wants its information, how the feds want their information. It's so many different languages. So luckily, with the CERT training today, what we're looking at volunteers who may not know the area. Let's say they're from Benton County and they come over to Camden County. They have no clue what roads were here. So using the GPS coordinates, those don't change. You don't need street signs to get GPS coordinates. And once you have it forever. So having that information on our records here at the EOC gives us the opportunity to translate it into something that will be usable to search and rescue teams, say out of Osage Beach Fire, because they've got a search and rescue team that goes out with the dogs, and giving them pertinent information that they're going to need to do their searches is what we're
Their
aiming
dogs are
for.
so skilled and so well trained.
Yeah, wow, seriously.
I mean, yeah, the people are cool too, but the dogs?
Yeah, their dogs are awesome. I need to go train with them again. Okay, so with the standard person, did you pick out the problems with the first example? Jasper, what would you say in your opinion of knowing what you told me of it's a mess out here and me having to pull the information out of you? What were the problems that could have cut down on me having to drill down for the answers?
Knowing what you were going to say before you said it. Notice how before I gave the second example, I paused for possibly too long a time to study the image I was going to report. But with the first one, I pretty much just jumped into it and went along, figured it out as we went.
So that's a good reason that I didn't pick up on and tell you guys before we started the examples. Pausing and studying and even writing down what you're going to say before you key that mic is so important, because when you have a large scale emergency, airwaves are like they're worth their weight in gold. To use a slight example there.
Oh, we're getting some sibilance into your mic. You may want to adjust it a little.
There we go. Is that better? All
A
right.
little bit further from your mouth.
So, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So, one of the reasons why you have to know what you're going to say before you key the mic and say it is if you are taking up time and space on the airwaves, you could be blocking someone who is literally trying to save a life. That is the one thing you don't want to do when airwaves are at a premium. One of the things that we do to help that situation is when certs are sent out, as you can see, we have the Bofangs. We have frequencies that are not used by first responders to pass information among the cert. And what that does is it takes all of our traffic off of potentially life-saving airwaves that the first responders are using during
Like
their
the
operation.
V Fire or V Tactical channels.
National calling frequencies, exactly.
Yeah.
So we would move over either to, if we have amateur radio operators that are available, that is always going to be my number one choice. I'm a little biased, I'll admit,
Yeah.
because I am an amateur radio operator and so is Jasper. But honestly, we have seen the amateur radios operate in areas where our professional radios, our commercial radios will not. We have
Even when
seen
we've done trainings, we've simulated the communications going down, but then the communications actually went down, so amateur radio was genuinely necessary for the training exercise.
exactly. So the biggest problem that we have had has been able to be conquered by using amateur radio. Of course, we have other options. The UHF, the 442 range, that's helpful for us, but it depends on how far apart our teams are, what our line of sight is, things like that. So we have a variety of things that we're able to be programmed into these radios, and even at low power, we're able to use those during emergencies. The second example I think was a lot better. You thought you paused too long, but actually, I think if you key the mic and then you take a couple of seconds to make sure that you have everything in order, and then you go out to incident command and let them know. I think that they're going to understand that, because I would much rather have someone go, okay, here's what I have for you, and here's the facts, and here's all the information, rather than someone go, okay, incident command, oh, hold on, let me get my piece of paper, hold on, hold on.
Right, it's always best to take pause before you call for instant command, rather than call instant command first and then figure it out.
Okay, so now we're going to get to what I think is Jasper's favorite part of the training ever.
Oh, are we going to
So
use some of the newer examples
we
too?
are, we are,
It's
we're going to look at the slides because I didn't have your newer examples when I put the slides together. So we're going to do the ones on the slides. Then I'm going to minimize those and pull up your new examples.
well, good, because the ones on the slides are still my favorite.
Oh, good. All right, so if you'll read them out, Jasper, I will point out why we definitely don't want to say this on the radio.
Or in front of the survivors, for that matter.
Or in front of the family of the survivors, or the family of the victims.
Or other first responders.
Oh, they can handle it. For other first responders can handle it.
True, but we don't want to be laughed out of the room by the first responders.
All right,
All
go
right.
ahead.
Ew, I'm not touching that. I'm sending them out to you.
Okay, so this is an entirely wasted space on the radio waves. To me, this is what I would call cotton candy. It's made of absolutely nothing. There is absolutely no piece of information, save for one thing in that entire two sentences, that is usable intel. And that is the fact that the victim is a male.
You assume their pronouns.
Yeah, I'm going to assume for this particular training, yes. What? Oh, that he's injured. Yeah.
Yeah, that too. That, well, not
Okay,
even
good.
necessarily injured. It's just that you don't want to touch that. So he could just be covered in glue.
The chief pointed out the third usable piece of information is that he's being sent out to the street or out to the yard. So,
But there are other ways to
Yep.
one, approach that, and two, phrase it so you get a lot more and a lot more effective information than
So, Jasper, if you were to correct this sentence just with some facts you make up, what would you say in place of those two sentences in that time period?
we have a male survivor in his mid 40s with a head wound, and we are bringing him out of the building for triage.
Perfect. I love that. I love that it's we are bringing him out. I love that you identified possible what the injury was. I love all of that. That is a great example. All right, so let's go on down to the I'm sending this guy out.
I'm sending this guy out, and he's bleeding and a little confused.
Well, that one was slightly better. Not only do we know that it's a guy, we know that he's injured, and with a little confused, we can almost assume that if the injury is to the head, then he may have a concussion, so or something to that extent. So we at
And we
least
can
can
check for things like shock.
we can check for shock. Yep. So at least we can pull a little bit more information, like context clues, out of that statement. But we
But when it
still,
comes to communicating effectively on the
yeah,
radio, don't rely on subtext. Just
exactly.
say it.
All right.
Please.
So how would you correct that one?
I heard he did a mid 40s guy.
I know.
All right.
Do a younger guy.
We're bringing out a man in his early 30s with a with a cut on his left arm, and he seems to be confused. So we will do triage outside of the building
Perfect.
to check for shock.
Perfect. All right. So the next one.
Hey, when you send the next team in, tell them they might need to duck.
Okay, so a couple of problems with that one. Most of the time, we let CERT know that if you're looking at major structural damage, CERT does not make entry. That is pretty much end of subject, universal training across the entire United States. So the fact that they might need to duck indicates that there might be damage to the roof that has caused the ceiling to collapse. There might be something
It might be
hanging.
more damage on the inside than it appeared on the outside.
Yeah, interior damage that's not indicated on the outside can happen a lot.
Maybe your really tall CERT member hit his head on a pipe, and you're just like, wow, the next guy better not do that.
Okay, so if we were going to clean it up using that example, that it's not any indication of damage, it's just got, let's say, low ceilings, and we know we have really tall CERT members.
We do. We do.
Ceiling fans hanging down, the chief pointed out. All right, so how would you clean up that statement to give an indication that it's not damage, it's just low roof?
Hold on, I'm thinking.
See, that's a good thing. We want you to
Because
think before you key up.
Because it's not just that there's a low roof, it's that it's low enough that it could cause injury to other CERT members, even though that's how the house already is.
And sometimes just using plain English like that on your transmission to tell them why is the best way to do it. So, incident command, we entered the structure. The ceilings are only 6 feet tall. And we know that we have a couple of CERTs that are 6'4". So they might experience a problem and need to duck their heads a little bit to make way through the house, right?
Right.
So a lot of what we have to look at is making sure that we're also using common terminology. We don't want to make it difficult for people to understand our message. All right, so
you don't want to pull an amateur radio operator and go, thanks for rag chewing with me, 73.
That's a perfect example. All right, go ahead to the last
one. That makes
one.
perfect sense to me and Mom, but it doesn't make any sense to the rest of you.
Pretty much. All right, go ahead to the last one.
She's a little messed up, but appears to be fine otherwise.
Okay, so again, something using pronouns that we pick up is what the survivor is, gender-wise, apparently. Um, the messed up part, again, you're going to make us assume facts, not in evidence. I feel like I've been on trial too much. But you're going to have the people on the other end of the radio trying to figure out and puzzle out what the problem is. Now,
Like, does she look messed up because she's injured? Does she just have some plaster in her hair?
is
Did
she
she wake
apparently
up on
on
the wrong
drugs or
side?
alcohol?
Did she wake up on the wrong side of the bed and just hasn't brushed her hair this morning?
So how would you straighten that example up?
Honestly, I just say what was
Wrong with her?
what was wrong. Like, in theory, unless the building you're in has structural damage on the inside that you didn't see from the outside,
Mhm.
you'll be doing triage in the building rather than out of it. So in theory, once you do your head to toe, you'll already know the color code of the individual and what any injuries are before
Exactly.
you need the mic.
Perfect. Now you've got some new examples for us, and I actually like that these examples. I especially like number 3. That's fun. Um,
Oh, the HIPAA violation.
yeah, I would be looking for that particular person who is transmitting all that information and silence them. Give me that
Yeah,
radio.
what I don't know if I cut it out myself or if you cut it out, but there was a cutoff part near the end where I was going to like make up a social security number.
Oh, wow. No, no, no. I didn't touch
Yeah,
it. It went straight on there. Okay,
okay,
so
good. Then I had some common sense.
so this guy won't leave even though the building is damaged. Okay, so ironically, that's pretty common in especially where we live in the Ozarks. People don't want to leave their homes for anything. I don't care. I don't care if there's a tornado coming. I don't care. They're not leaving and you can't make them. You have
I was
no
born in
idea.
this hole and I'll die in this hole.
Pretty much. So that is actually okay to transmit along with potentially, what the guy looks like or saying that he is the homeowner, whatever the case may be, because that's just a piece of information that can be noted associated with that address, just the way the sheriff's department does it. So that there's actually nothing wrong with that unless I
Now,
would
my
say he
question,
was
the reason
injured.
I put this on here is because I wasn't sure if there was a different way CERT would be able to go about this if it were a business building
Oh,
rather than
yeah.
residential.
That's a good
Be-
point. If it is
Because CERT has no
a
authority
legal
to like
authority.
kick people out.
Right.
But
Exactly. Um, that is actually a really good question that I don't have the answer to. I love when you finally find one that I don't know the answer to.
I
Let's
love
see
when
what
I put you on
Steve
the spot
says.
like this. Sorry.
Question is, if instead of we're assuming it's a residence, what if it's a business building?
The guy won't leave.
Yeah, because he's obviously not the owner. He was just a customer or whatever.
If fire departments are there, we can make them leave.
Okay, so first responder authorities can make them leave.
Okay, so CERT just reports back to
Reports
Incident
it
Command
back.
with the information so the first
Correct.
responders can't get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's a very nice way for you to put that, and I'm still glad they can't hear you.
Yeah, we're getting
So
nothing from James.
it's probably a good thing.
Yes.
So it, what he said is that fire departments, first responders, police officers, all of them, they can actually escort him from uh, the
Premises.
residence or the premises. Yeah. So, yeah, but it's still important to know that as a volunteer, this information is okay. What we'll do is we'll put in information that says once that's relayed to first responders, they can make the decision, especially if it's a public building or anything like that, that they can escort them off the premises. Okay. The next one, I can't understand what this woman is saying. Instead of saying something like that, you want to be more specific. Is it because they have some kind of damage to their face and they're not communicating well because they're injured? Is it because they speak a different language? Is
Is
it
it because they have some sort of disability that affects how they speak?
There you go. There you go. Um, so there's any number of things you should say instead of that. Now, example number 3.
I've got Bobby Joe Buckley here. He lives at 235 Oak Street. He has diabetes and a broken arm. We're tagging him yellow and sending him to triage at the town park.
If the trainer puts their head in their hands, that's a bad thing. Okay, so we've got a number of problems here, and we've got a number of good things.
HIPAA violation is problem number 1.
HIPAA violation is number 1. There's about 3 pieces of information there that we literally do not need to be saying on the radio as CERT volunteers. Now, whether or not things are put over the radio as first responder agencies is neither here nor there, but they do have more capability of relaying information sometimes.
They're also first responders, so they get to do a lot of things that Joe Public and Joe CERT team don't get to do.
I like Joe CERT team. We're using that in 2024. Okay, so Joe CERT team is allowed to say he has a broken arm, he's being tagged yellow, but
And we're
we
bringing him
don't,
to triage.
yeah, we're bringing him to the treatment area in the park. We are not sending him. So,
Do not send survivors alone to
right.
different areas because you have to make sure that they actually show up,
Yes.
not just wander off into the woods.
The next one, his arm looks a little funny, but he can walk, so I'm pretty sure he's green. Now, we don't put the same level of responsibility on CERT volunteers that first responders have when triaging patients because they don't have the same level of training. So whether or not it's a guess on whether the guy is green, yellow, or red it's pretty much they try up to their best efforts in the training that they've been given. True, if that broken arm is not cutting through a vein, an artery, or anything else, yes, he very well in this particular case may be tagged green because he can still walk, talk, and he's fine and upright.
The
That could
reason
be
I
the
phrased some of these the way they are is because there's always a better way to phrase these to get across more information, better information,
correct.
stuff like that. So this one's more of a phrasing issue rather than.
So without the phrasing issue, we'd be looking at male in his mid-30s, possible broken arm. He is mobile, and so we are triaging him green, and we will be bringing him out. To me, that would be quick information. Incident command can record that. We know that he's not passed out and in danger of dying. Does that make sense?
All right. He's not experiencing postprandial somnolence.
All
For
right.
those of you who don't know, that's a food coma.
We've got some guy here who's insisting on helping us. What do we do about him? Okay, so that's actually a really good example of something that can happen because when we go through a large scale emergency, people will come out of the woodwork to help. And I like the quotes around help. Because even if they have no training, they still want to help, fine, because we can always use more hands. But the problem is that we need to do it in a way that's going to be safe for our team, and we need to do it in a way that'll be safe for the new volunteer.
The spontaneous volunteer.
The spontaneous volunteer, very good. So there is a better way to deal with that, and using the phrasing, we have come across a spontaneous volunteer who would like to help us is perfectly acceptable. You can ask incident command if you can't make a call in the field. Ask incident command their opinion or their command or their advice on what you need to do. It removes the pressure of you taking responsibility for making that decision, and it raises it to a higher level. Because what we always want to remember with our CERT volunteers is they are only trained to a certain level, disregarding the fact whether they're all first responders volunteering for CERT. Most
When
of
they're
them,
acting as CERT,
when they're
they only
acting
have
as
so much training.
CERT, they only have a certain level of training that they're allowed to go up to. So we want to maintain that if Joe Public has volunteered and gotten CERT training, we don't expect him to know what to do with spontaneous volunteers that just walk up to the certs in the field, right?
Joe CERT team can then bring the spontaneous volunteers to, I guess, somewhere in Incident Command. If we have enough spontaneous volunteers, I imagine that we'll be setting up some sort of area to get them handled.
Um, Incident Command can set up a registration post and they can register to assist while on the scene. Otherwise, we tell them thank you very much for your offer of assistance. However, this is a dangerous scene, so we'd like you to stay off to the side or not be in the middle of it so that there's no chance that you will be injured. So it's something that, again, you elevate it to someone higher in authority. That way, if they need somebody to argue with, they can come argue with me.
And don't be fooled, Mom loves to argue.
I'm going to do this last one, but then I've got one more example that is becoming extremely prevalent. So I want to hit this one and then do the other example. Hey, can you send an ambulance down Main Street for this red? Just tell them they may have to swerve around some debris.
It's the head in the hand.
So the fire chief said, cool. You know you did something wrong. When the fire
I'm
chief
not
says
surprised
cool.
to hear that.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Even the
So
medics would
part of
have fun
what
with that.
CERT does as we go along is if we can, we move some of the debris out of the way for the
Exactly.
first responders,
Yes.
provided it is safe and we can do that without breaking our own bones.
But not only that, you can also relay we're removing debris from the road to make it easier for the first responders. And you can't request an ambulance. You can say that you have reds that are extremely dire, and you can ask them to speak with the first responder incident command to see if they have any ambulances available. They may not.
Mm.
Now, the final example that is becoming extremely prevalent in this day and age, since we all have these wonderful things, is the quote media. So everybody and their brother now thinks that they are reporters because they can get on Facebook Live and video everything live that's going out to the entire world from a scene. So this brings us to the point of when you all are on the radios, keep in mind everything you say can be recorded, everything you do can be recorded, and you have, as a CERT volunteer, certain legal coverage, the Good Samaritan Act and things like that. But you really want to try and protect yourself by never giving any personal information on the survivor, and you want to make sure that you are being as professional as possible and using proper decorum when you are speaking, because you never know who's recording what, you never know who is watching and observing so that they can say something later. So be careful when you are on scenes. If you are going to be the one transmitting over the radio, that you maintain, say exactly what you're allowed to say, keep the HIPAA violation stuff out of it, which is private information to the survivor, including their name, age, address, social security number, anything that you have that's personally identifiable. So if you guys need more information on the HIPAA stuff, we'll go over that at a future meeting. Okay? Does that sound good so far, Jasper?
Yeah, we are rocking and rolling.
Hey, I try. I should have brought a bottle of water with me. All right, we get to skip practice time because we're going to be doing that at our March meeting when we are back in person, because the February meeting is still virtual and that will be paperwork training. But this is a good example of why just saying things like a tree is on the house does not help in disaster zones.
Is the tree on the house or in the house?
This is specifically why I picked these 3 pictures, because any of them you can say the tree is on the house, and that does not narrow down where we need to be looking at all, right?
You can't even really narrow it down with the color of the house because both pictures 2 and 3 have the same color walls and roof.
Well, 2 is
Unless you're
actually
out here,
peach, and 3
unless
is yellow.
I have my screen darkened so I can conserve battery.
Oh, but Chief's got some input. What?
On the tree part,
Yeah.
it does help when if you can tell, say, what side of the house it's on.
Oh, okay. So Chief's piece of information is it would help first responders if you can tell them what side of the house the tree is on. So is it on A, B, C, or D side? And if it appears, like you said, to be going through the roof versus just being on the roof.
Like that one, say that did go through the front door, like
Mhm.
front. That'd be useful because usually most living rooms are in the front of the house.
So he says, for instance, if it's on the A side, most living rooms are on the front of the house. So if the tree did go through picture 3, and let's say it went through the living room, it looks like it may not have damaged bedrooms where maybe people were sleeping if it was nighttime, things like that. Mhm. So during daylight hours, it makes them want to check the living room because that tends to be where people are during the daytime.
Unless they're hermits like me.
See, having you guys here has helped because there's always something that if one person doesn't think of it, many do. So
Oh, I
this
forgot
is
about these
fun.
pictures.
Yeah, this is fun. This right here, the reason why I used the pictures I used on these 3 examples specifically is to show you the difference in response and information if you have a multi-level house or a multi-level apartment building versus a single residence, multi-level or single level home. Because you are looking at a difference in the number of victims.
People living there.
Yep, by the people living there. Exactly. A single level residence could have 1 to 4 people, whatever the case may be. A 2 or 3 story single family residence, 3, 4, 5 people, whatever. But when you get to something like picture 1, which could be a 5 or 6 story apartment building that looks like it is in the shape of a T, you're looking at a lot of families. And if you're looking at 3 to 4 people per family in a structure that size, that is a massive effort. So that's just what I wanted to point out with pictures 1, 2, and 3. In CERT's case, none of these buildings should be entered. This is definitely extremely heavily damaged in all 3 cases.
I'm trying to figure out what happened to the building in picture 1 because it looks like it got like a scoop taken out for.
I'm going to say it was probably an earthquake, and that's probably a wall that the next section of the apartment building was starting to be built onto to extend it, and the new building fell, which left the old one. So that's what I'm going to guess on that one. But that gives you a good example of why you need to relay. Was it a multi-story building? How many levels were there? Was it, did it possibly have a basement? That's very important. We hear all the time about first responders, particularly firefighters, who fall through floors and end up in basements. And unfortunately, there's a good number of them that don't make it out.
Hey,
So
James, how many times have you fallen into a basement?
I don't think he's fallen into a basement. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, she wants to know how many times you've fallen into a basement.
Never.
Like through
He
the
says
floor.
never. We're all going to knock on wood now. This is real wood right here. All right. So, any discussion or questions so far from the audience? All right. So, parts of the radio: antenna, power and volume knob, transmit button right here on the side. Of course, you have your clip, which I didn't point out. This is the charging port. On these radios, it's on the back, but on many radios, it's on the bottom. It's on the back of that one too. The buttons to change the channel or the frequency right here. Yep, there's your power now. Oh, switch channels. Yep, yep. All right, and on some radios like this one, hopefully you can see this, there's the lock button.
Move your finger.
Yep.
A little closer to the camera. There we go.
I love Jasper's guidance. All right, the things you don't want to say is A, things that would break the law. You don't need to be breaking the law, transmitting people's personal information and things like that. Things that take up the time on the airwaves when you could be relaying information that could potentially save lives.
And try not to say swear words because
Yes.
the FCC will find you.
And what to say, you should say information that will clearly tell responders what the location looks like, how many victims there are or survivors there are, potentially what kind of dangers they're looking at running into, and anything else that is pertinent to the situation. Okay. Make sure you practice because we can tell you all day and night what to say, how to say it. But if you don't practice, then you're not going to be able to do it in a regular situation. As a final note, always welcome people to your team who have disabilities or impairments. They can bring a new side to your training and efforts, especially when dealing with communications. One of the best people that I like to talk about on these is we have a friend who is a blind amateur radio operator, and she is absolutely amazing at communications. Here in Camden County, we have a gentleman who has a disability, and he is absolutely amazing on the radio. So never discount people, and they may be your best source of communications. All right. Thank you to the members of the Camden County Most CERT Community Emergency Response Team for your continued efforts to upkeep your training to serve the residents and visitors of your respective counties in case of large-scale emergencies, because some of our CERTs don't actually live in Camden County, so our CERTs still take that information out to the other counties that they live in. Here's my information. If you need to get a hold of me, that's my office number. We're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It's 573-346-7108. My email is there. And of course, we have websites, both the ccmostcert.com as well as emacamdenmo.org, which I'll show you guys both of those, because this is a great source of information. A lot of time building the websites and collating information. So please feel free. Everything is open access and open use on these websites. If it will help your area and save you on some legwork, because I've already done all the legwork for you, then please feel free to use it.
Or taking it from Boone County. Thank you, Boone County.
Yeah, thank you, Boone County. If I didn't create it myself, I probably borrowed it from Boone County. I'm also a member of the Missouri CERT Association, so of course you can go to mocerta.org. That's mocerta.org. Not that I've been to 15 million of these websites a bazillion times, but if you have any questions or need any assistance, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me at all three of the organizations. But we will be more than happy to work with you on any questions that you have and any trainings that you need. So, with that being said, do we have any other questions or concerns we can assist you with at this time? All right.
All good here.
Thank you all for joining the training. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. This is Sam Henley, KE0LMY.